Thank you, Bibi. Good afternoon once again, everyone. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. My name is Rachel Tokuapia, and I lead the nutrition work at the Graça Machel Trust. And it's my honor this afternoon to facilitate the session on implications for investments, financing, and going to scale on nutrition and food security. So this morning we had the opportunity to hear a lot. We heard the statistics, 58 million children on our continent stunted, the high levels of anemia in women. And if we're truly looking at eliminating malnutrition on our continent, then it has huge implications when it comes to the financing and the approaches we use to go to scale. And to help us think through this, we will hear presentations from panelists. I will introduce them as they come and speak. But if I can, I'm not sure if the technology folk are ready with the presentations. If they are, may I invite Jennifer Susan Chiriga. She's the first, if she's in the room. Sorry. Thank you, Jennifer. So Jennifer works with NPCA. She has extensive experience in the development space and also in advocacy around investments for different social issues. And this afternoon she'll be speaking to us on the role and relevance of AU organs in supporting the elimination of hunger and malnutrition in Africa. Jennifer, if you could please come and speak. And while Jennifer is coming, may I please invite the other panelists to come and take their seats. So if I could have Dr. Alison Feely, then Ms. Morgan Daji, Dr. Marie Tanner, and if Mr. Robson Mutandi. So I know we're running quite late, and so we're going to endeavor to try and catch up a little. If each presenter could speak for 7 minutes. Thank you. My apologies, we have one more panelist, Angeline Rudakubana, if she could also please come and take her seat. Thank you. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Can I go ahead? Okay, I'm speaking today on the role and relevance of AU organs in supporting the elimination of hunger and malnutrition. I have the benefit of speaking after many presentations that have really comprehensively contextualized the issues. So I'm really just going to skim the surface, especially since there's not much time. So I'll just highlight some of the issues around the role of AU organs. To start with, I'd just like to say currently Africa spends in excess of 40 billion a year on food imports. The population is growing, and so is the demand for food, as well as for the market for food production. So Africa is leading the rest of the world in terms of food insecurity and malnourishment, and I think we've already heard much about this in the morning. And all of this is exacerbated by civil unrest, political instability, and unemployment, to name just a few. Now, given the significant number of AU organs and specialized agencies based in South Africa, and specifically here in Johannesburg and in Midrand, to be exact, and considering the need for effective coordination, There is great potential for collaboration and partnership to address these challenges, and we can deepen coordination and facilitate engagement between our organs, and by developing a common understanding and creating areas of synergy where possible and where relevant. I'd like in this presentation to touch on the role and relevance of the AU organs in supporting socio-economic development and, by extension, the elimination of hunger and malnutrition in Africa through their individual and unique areas of focus. I'll make reference to two organs, the APRM and the Pan African Parliament itself, as well as two specialized agencies of the African Union, the Africa Risk Capacity and the African Union Foundation. Let me start with the African Peer Review Mechanism. This is an instrument that monitors performance in governance in our member states, and it facilitates review of member states' compliance with African and international governance commitments. The mechanism's primary objective is to foster the adoption of policies, values, standards, and practices of political and economic governance that lead to political stability, accelerated sub-regional and continental economic integration. Add to that economic growth and sustainable development. So socio-economic development is one of the thematic areas that the APRM works with. And the scope of its inquiries is comprehensive, and interest groups have made good use of it to agitate for their causes. This therefore makes it a uniquely insightful instrument for examining the diverse issues covered in the APRM country review reports. Issues such as land tenure, its role in development, relationship to gender, and so on. So since land is vital to agricultural production, finding ways to resolve land issues is important. So the APRM plays a role in that it can make use of accountability mechanisms to address such issues. I'll move now to the Pan African Parliament itself. Of course, we know the functioning of the Committee on Rural Economy, Agriculture, Natural Resources is of central importance in assisting the Parliament in its role of harmonizing policies. I'll take the angle of the founding instruments of the Pan African Parliament and how they make provision for interaction with civil society formations to bring in the voice of the people into the development discourse. Given the transparency in the deliberations of the Parliament, which are open to the public, there's scope for building in popular participation so that there's citizen involvement in the policy dialogue processes. So civic engagement can promote citizens' voice in Africa's development, and in particular, this area that we are talking about today. And this is in line with Agenda 2063's Aspiration 6, which invokes people-driven development with emphasis on inclusivity and active involvement of the people in shaping policies that affect them at household as well as community level. So it stands to reason that as the Pan-African Parliament exercises its oversight role, civic involvement would be very helpful if they can factor this in this field of food security and malnutrition. On the specialized agencies, I spoke of the two that I'll look at. Africa Risk Capacity. This was established as a specialized agency of the AU to help member states improve their capacities to better plan, prepare, and respond to extreme weather events and natural disasters, therefore protecting the food security of their vulnerable populations. So the technical engine is called Africa Risk View, and it's the core risk management product of the African Risk Capacity. To date, the focus has been much on drought-related issues. So it's an advanced satellite weather surveillance software that combines existing operational early warning models for agricultural drought in Africa, combined with data on vulnerable populations to form a standardized approach for estimating drought-related food insecurity response costs across the continent. The African Risk Capacity's risk management product helps to avert the severe damage that could be a direct result of natural disasters. and the payouts ensure that hunger and malnutrition are not exacerbated during times like this. The tool has been tried and tested and has triggered early payouts to 3 participating member states in the Sahel region, which, as we all know, is very prone to these droughts. Let me now move to the African Union Foundation, which was launched in January 2015 and is tasked with accommodating contributions from the private sector and individuals and any other donations towards financing African development priorities. The AU Foundation was very central to the handheld hoe project, which is showcased on their website. This was unveiled in the AU Summit of 2015 here in South Africa, where the tiller, this modern farm implement, was launched and endorsed by heads of state. So this is just really one example where something like this could be seen to contribute to this whole discussion on food security. Because the project might not directly address hunger and malnutrition, but its focus on agriculture definitely has potential to contribute a solution to these challenges. Let me conclude by pointing out another important sector, and this is the sector of universities and research institutions. In July 2017, the AU chairperson met with a delegation from RUFORUM. RUFORUM is the Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building in Agriculture. I think it's based in Mozambique. And in this meeting, he emphasized the need for Africa to invest in research in the agricultural sector in order to contribute the skills necessary to ensure food security and nutrition for the citizens of the continent. The agricultural faculties in universities have a key role to play in development and are therefore of critical importance as sites of capacity building. In terms of research and graduate training in agriculture, and so in this way they can make a transformative contribution to agriculture on the continent, because by then we'll have a critical mass of highly skilled agriculture professionals. As you can see, the list I've tried to cover today is far from exhaustive. As I said in the beginning, I really just skimmed the surface. It's merely meant to stimulate an ongoing conversation on the role and relevance of AU organs in supporting the elimination of hunger and malnutrition. I will stop here and would like to thank you for your attention.
If you could just give her another round of applause. Thank you.
She managed to keep to time. Thank you very much, Susan, Jennifer. It is now I think that was a very comprehensive overview of the various organs within the AU that can be used to support elimination of hunger and malnutrition. If you'll bear with me, as we did with the earlier panel, we will leave the questions until the end. So it is now my pleasure and honor to invite Ms. Angeline Ruda-Kubana from the WFP Country Office to come and speak to us about scaling up evidence-based study, about the cost of hunger studies and how to scale up. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I don't know what to do because I don't have my presentation ready yet. Maybe I could pass to someone else?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Someone else. That's fine. So I give space to someone else in the meantime. Is that okay?
Yes. My apologies. Is Dr. Alison Feely's presentation up? May I ask if Dr. Alison Feely's presentation could be presented? Could be projected?
Everything is done upstairs, so we don't have control. We have to go up and down.
Okay. Our apologies, please just bear with us for a moment. Should we do questions? You can start. Okay.
Just talk.
Yes. Okay. So while we're sorting out the technology, Ms. Angeline Ruda-Kubana will start sharing with us. Thank you.
Hi, panelists. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, honorable members of parliament. Good afternoon, colleagues, panelists, colleagues from NEPAD agency, colleagues from other UN agencies, and all the invited guests. I really want to thank NEPAD for giving us this space to talk to you and present to you this famous study we call The Cost of Hunger on Africa, which is known as COHA. First, to give you a background, I don't know how to do this. Yeah? Yeah, no, I'm just looking at what it is. So I just want to give you a brief introduction of what it is. The Cost of Hunger study in Africa is a study that was commissioned, is a Pan African initiative. It was launched by the African Union Commission and NEPAD in partnership with UN Economic Commission for Africa and the World Food Programme. The objective was and is to estimate the economic and social costs of undernutrition at a national level and regional level or continental level. It is a tool that provides evidence. It's used to lobby as a global, regional, and national high-level fora to increase investment for nutrition interventions. We note that nutrition is a fundamental catalyst in shaping human capital. In shaping human capital, achieving inclusive growth, though it still remains a major challenge on Africa. If it's a challenge and it's a fundamental catalyst, it requires positioning, constant positioning, and maintaining it high on the African development agenda in order to meet the AU targets of the Agenda 2063. The study demonstrates child undernutrition can and is a determinant factor in achieving Africa's transformation agenda declared by our heads of states and government. To date, it still remains a key challenge on the continent, and it requires generating conscious synergies between economic growth and social inclusion. COHA study provides all those elements in detail. Next. I go to the last. Once you've done this study at country level, at global level, what else do you need to know? Knowing that it's costing you so much is not enough. So the next steps is the government, the member states, the decision makers need to know what does it cost to close the gap, to reduce and eradicate chronic malnutrition, which is stunting. The process needs to evolve to offer complementary technical expertise to identify most effective intervention or interventions at national level and global level. We need to provide estimations of the investment gap at the national level in terms of monetary terms and resources that are required. Once we've done that, then we need to provide concrete evidence demonstrated in data analysis with a data repository and as a public good on the continent that helps us to make decisions. Next. So clearly, I don't seem to be seeing this. I think I'm even better off looking at the back. So if you look at the findings of this study, it tells you the story that we have listened to the whole morning from all the honorable speakers and the technical speakers that went before us. The numbers speak for themselves. Out of 162 million stunted children, under 5 children are stunted, and out of that, 40% are on the continent of Africa. So I won't go into all those details, but if you look at the color code, it will show you in the green, it shows you that there is improvement being realized. It shows you in the gray that it is really, really an alarming red. Graphically, that map tells you the story. There are some countries where we don't have the data. So this needs to be done. Next. So if it's a challenge, again, it was said before that there has been some reduction, which was only recorded at 7.2% in 85, from 85 to 2016, and 15 million of the 154 million children under age of 5 in this region are stunted. So Africa faces a very strong challenge. 10 out of 17 are on our continent, the worst affected. So on the whole, in conclusion, the whole region is not on course to achieve what we are talking about in our Agenda 2063. Next. I'm going to do this. So it would be good to share with you, and I know I have only 1 minute or less to go, but the key message to take forward is that you take my plea on behalf of the African Union and NEPAD, as members of parliament, as decision makers we have been told and re-emphasized the whole of the morning, to find out at what stage, what rates your respective countries are on in terms of stunting rates. Find out what your costs in GDP are. This is really important. I would have taken you to the maps that shows each country that has gone through the process, but I don't think I have that time. But these studies exist in your respective countries. But we really count on you lawmakers to push and make it really a priority, and it remains a priority on your agenda, on your radar when you get back home or when you speak to your people, that malnutrition is killing us and it will not ever let us advance in all the aspirations that we have. Reiterating what my colleagues have said, it's investment. It's investment, but we need to do the study. Each country has to go through the study to be able to know that the difference between Botswana, between Uganda, between Rwanda, between Egypt, they are different and the factors are different. So please, this study, I request you to make it a homework, to find out about it. You can have the website, which will tell you where your countries stand. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Angeline. If you could please just give her another round of applause. I will now invite to the podium the next panelist, Dr. Alison Feely. She has extensive experience in the field of public health nutrition and is currently with UNICEF South Africa office. She'll be speaking to us about investments for nutrition-sensitive programming in agriculture, rural development, and food systems. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you very much, Chair. Actually, the title of my presentation is Consequences and Implications of Malnutrition. We did update it during the week, sorry about that. The role of parliamentarians in improving outcomes. Next, please. So I'm not going to dwell too much, for very much longer on this slide because we've seen from the previous presenter the figures for stunting. But just to say that undernutrition contributes to nearly half of all deaths in children under the age of 5, and that translates to about 3 million deaths per year. Undernutrition puts children at greater risk of dying from common infections. It increases the frequency and severity of such infections and contributes to their delayed recovery. And this interaction causes growth faltering. Next, please. So stunting, which we all know about, low height for age, is the outcome of this chronic undernutrition and frequent infections during those first 1,000 days, which we heard about earlier this morning. And if unattended, the damage to child's physical and mental development is irreversible. The consequences of stunting include diminished mental ability and learning capacity, poor school performance, reduced earnings, and increased risk of nutrition-related chronic diseases later on in life, such as obesity, diabetes, and hypertension. So the ramifications are large. They affect the child in the early years as well as their outcomes as adolescents and adults. And could you go back one moment, please? Some research has shown that children who are stunted and remain stunted in adulthood earn 20% less than their counterparts who were of normal stature. So that not only affects them individually, but it affects their ability to provide for their families later on in life. Next, please. And of course that has economic impact, which we've already heard about from our previous speaker. But in some figures for you, which are quite astounding. In Africa, total estimated losses associated with undernutrition were equivalent to 16.5% of the GDP in Ethiopia, for example, and 3% of GDP in Swaziland, and 5.6% of GDP in Uganda. But on the upside, every dollar you spend on nutrition interventions during those first 1,000 days from conception to the age of 2, you'll generate $16 return in your investment and a possible boost to your country's GDP by over 10%. So it really does pay to invest in the early years. In East and Southern Africa, every dollar invested in nutrition can generate between $34 and $75 in economic productivity. Next, please. So these are the regional trends. We've heard these numbers already, so I won't dwell too long, just to say that since 2000, prevalence of stunting has increased. So that's from 50.4 million to 59 million in 2016. So the rest of the world, they're bringing their numbers down, but ours are going up. So we need to really work hard in Africa to make a dent on those numbers. Next, please. So what can we do about it? We've heard a lot about food systems and agriculture and so forth, but actually optimal feeding is the first step. Optimal feeding of infants and young children can increase their chance of survival. In fact, it does increase their chance of survival. It promotes optimum growth and development, and it's especially critical during those first 1,000 days. And what is the recommendation from the WHO and UNICEF? Breastfeed within the first hour of delivery. So when the child is born, put the baby to the breast immediately. Exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months. That means giving only breast milk, nothing else. No water, no sugar water, no pre-lacteal feeds, just breast milk for the first 6 months. And then at 6 months of age, introduce complementary foods whilst continuing to breastfeed up until 2 years and beyond. It's almost too simple, isn't it? You know, every woman who has a baby has the capacity potentially to do this, but what's lacking is support, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I'd just like to reiterate this. A child who is not breastfed at all within those first 6 months of life has a 14 times increased risk of death compared to that exclusively breastfed infant. And a child who is mixed-fed, given some breast milk and other foods, has a 4 times increased risk of death. So that just shows you the power of breast milk. Next slide, please. I'm going to rush through these next 3 slides, but it gives you some of the indicators for our region. And if you just look at the blue bars, please. The first 2 blue bars talk about initiation of breastfeeding, so putting the baby to the breast in the first hour. The second bar is the exclusive breastfeeding rate in that region. And the final bar on the right, the blue bar, is that continuation of breastfeeding at 2 years of age. And you can see in Eastern and Southern Africa, initiation is at 63%, and it drops to about half for exclusive breastfeeding. And then only 53% of children are continually breastfed at 2 years of age. Next slide, please. And those figures are lower in West and Central Africa, 29% and 47% respectively. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, okay. Right, so why are we not achieving these numbers? Why are we not optimally feeding our children? But one of the biggest issues that we face in public health is the aggressive promotion of breast milk substitutes. So breast milk substitute companies promote formula to mothers, and they don't tell them that breast milk is the optimal food for their child. And this creates a dependency on breast milk substitute, and therefore the mother forgoes breastfeeding. I mean, that's very simplified. We could spend a whole couple of hours talking about it, but essentially it's the aggressive marketing practices of these substitutes that's very critical. The other thing is that there's a conflict of interest and BMS company influence on the health systems. They used various ways of promoting their products to healthcare workers as well as to mothers of children, and this causes confusion with messaging and lack of support and advice to mothers. Thank you. In addition to that, there's lack of maternity leave and support for breastfeeding mothers, and inappropriate promotion of foods for infants and young children. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Are we not... So anyway, we do have regulatory frameworks. I'll wait for that slide to come up. And we do have frameworks such as the Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, which many countries have signed up to. We also have maternity protection measures, such as those from the International Labour Organization, and also another new framework is the implementation of recommendations for the marketing of foods and non-alcoholic beverages to young children. And all of these frameworks are there, and some countries are adopting them, some more than others. Right. So what can we do as parliamentarians? Okay, sorry. Second last slide, please. Next one. Yeah. Okay. So basically, parliamentarians represent the interests of mothers and babies, and you can act as champions and leaders to promote enacting these legislations for maternity leave, the international code, and maternity protection, as well as the marketing of foods to children. You can also reach out to civil society, as well as the UN agencies such as WHO and UNICEF, and we're very happy to support countries in developing and instituting these frameworks, as well as in monitoring them. Next slide, please. But of course, it would be better to act as a region or as a collective, and we can improve our impact if we align our regulations with the code and maternity protection. Final slide, please. And I've shared with this brief with our NPCA colleagues, who will send it to you by email. It's a 6-page advocacy document, and it contains most of the information that I've shared with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alison. Sorry that we are rushing our panelists a little, but we really want to make sure we hear everyone. The next panelist is Mr. Robson Mutandi from IFAD, and he's actually the one that will speak to us about investments for nutrition-sensitive programming. Thank you. Mr. Mutandi.
Looks like, thank you. Looks like we have no PowerPoint. I suppose that people who are here will get access to those copies, so I don't have to, yeah, that one. And thank you. Also, just Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, protocols observed. Thank you to the organizers for pulling IFAD into this thing. And I know that it was not easy. And my colleague has just come from Botswana, so there was also a Botswana event. But what I wanted to share with you very quickly, and I'll really rush through because the slides are there, you can take them with you home, is what IFAD is trying to do to help through this thing. Now, IFAD is the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and not very many people know what we do. We're in the business of financing agriculture, smallholder agriculture, but we are also part of the UN family. So we one time if we feel a little bit under pressure, we become a UN agency. When we are feeling too comfortable, we become an international finance institution. So we play between those two places. But the key responsibility that we have is to finance smallholder agriculture in developing countries. And that in itself means that we are not particularly interested in what happens in urban areas. Just a little bit of a note to those of you who may not be aware that the bulk of your food comes from rural smallholder farmers in Africa. They produce about 80% of our food, and that's where we also have the bulk of poverty and malnutrition. The guys who are producing our food are the guys who are malnutritioned and stunted. And I guess I would not be very wrong to say that the figures for malnutrition are worse in rural areas than they are in urban areas. And so we are a little bit comfortable that other agencies will take care of those guys in urban areas, and governments really are under pressure to sort out what happens in the rural areas. So next slide, please. Now before that one. Now, that map, I don't know how neat it is. It shows you where we work. And we really just focus in sub-Saharan Africa. We are in all the countries from South Africa up to Egypt. We don't work in developing countries, although we work in middle-income countries, South Africa, Botswana, and so forth. And my responsibility at the moment is for Botswana, South Africa, and Mozambique. And so when we look at that map, it translates into money. The bulk of our work is in Africa. It means half of IFAD's resources are spent in Africa. On an annual basis, next slide, please, we are sitting at about $1.3 billion annually. It's not a lot of money for some people, but it's significant for us. That slide shows the 46% growth that we are talking about in Africa. Next slide, and the 80% rural poor who are living there. The next slide there also shows you the kinds of things that we invest in. And you see in the middle of that circle, there's issues of nutrition, there's issues of climate change, there's issues of gender. Those are what we call cross-cutting issues in IFAD. And what we do with those cross-cutting issues is to mainstream them. And nutrition is one of them. And what we are in the business of doing now is to make sure that all our investments in sub-Saharan Africa have nutrition elements mainstreamed within them. And you'll be surprised that even in projects that we design, we just completed a rural finance program in Mozambique where we had to mainstream nutrition activities into a financial product. And you wonder how the banks and commercial banks are going to handle this, but it's doable. And so we're doing that. Next slide, again, shows you the growth in terms of our IFAD, slow growth in taking care of nutrition. From 2010, we didn't do much in nutrition areas, and that is really reason 2016, where about 46% of our investments are nutrition sensitive, and we are growing. The next slide, please. The next slide shows you the kinds of things that we do in the investment areas. For instance, if we are investing in access to markets, a program, how do we ensure that nutrition is mainstreamed there? So we do programs there that enhance nutritious foods, products, and local markets, and contribution of nutritious foods to the community. Now, you may also be aware that fish is a very good source of nutritious food. I do work with artisanal fisher people along the coast of Mozambique, and they hardly, they are the worst affected in terms of nutrition statistics, stunting, malnutrition and stuff like that. And they sell very nice fish, they sell very nice prawns, they sell very nice things to us and we eat. And they deprive themselves of these things. So again, the fact that these farmers and fisher people are growing these things doesn't necessarily mean they're eating them. So a lot of our investments within IFAD is to do nutrition literacy, nutrition education programs, cooking nice things. Those of you who fly, you might have seen a lot of few films that are run in the aeroplane showing some of these nice cookeries and things that you can eat as you fly. Next slide. So there's all kinds of things that we do within the investment programs that we do. Now what that slide shows you is that although we are really trying as IFAD to handle this, we're still running short in some areas. We are doing well on areas of food and vegetable cereals, meats and legumes and stuff like that. We are not doing that well with investment programs on dairy, eggs and fish. And just the point that I mentioned earlier on, that people might be doing fish, but they're not really consuming it. So there's an issue there. The women who produce eggs, good number of them are sold, and they don't eat them. So we want to increase investment. So one of the tricks is to increase the production of those things in those areas. Make sure that they produce more than they are currently doing, so that there's excess for them to consume. I grew up in a very rural setting, and I never tasted chicken until my father was satisfied. So, so I doubt if my mother ever had any chicken. So next slide. This one shows you some of the things that we do. Nigeria there shows you the trade-offs between cash crops. What is normally referred to as a traditional crop suddenly becomes a cash crop. You have seen how beer now is made from cassava. And where cassava used to go for consumption, it's now going to the brewery. And we drink this Impala beer, nice beer, very nice. And that is, that can be dangerous. So we're trying to alert. Sorghum is another one. A lot of, those of you who live in this country, they know that SAB Miller is very aggressive on the sorghum issues for buying sorghum for the breweries. So we want to encourage people, farmers, to keep some of that stuff and eat it and not sell all of it. Next slide, please. In Malawi is another example where we have a livelihood thing, and then but again, here to improve the extension system in terms of how they take care of the nutrition literacy issues. Next slide, Chef. Mauritania, another one. I met somebody from Mauritania earlier on, and here you look at the times of the season when there is no, certain foods are not available. And normally that would not be an issue for an IFAD designer. If I'm doing a project design, not particularly interested when you're not having your nutritious food. I'm interested in you growing palm oil or cocoa, whatever you want to export. And once you've exported, I look at the figures and your balance sheet and I'm happy. But I'm not particularly keen on when you're hungry, when your very good foods are not available. And so now we are really getting back to say what happens when during the off season. And so that's a very good example we have from Mauritania. Now, talking to parliamentarians, we really are asking for advocacy here. I do believe that we have converted soldiers here, and not only here but back home where we work. I've worked all over in Ethiopia, Kenya. We have very committed members of parliament who have been very supportive of our activities in the nutrition mainstreaming area, to the extent that we even now investing more, a lot more in dollar terms in these nutrition activities in those countries that we operate in. And we hope that this message can go to our fellow financiers who are also doing the same. I know the bank is doing the same. She's probably going to talk about it, ADB and World Bank and stuff like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mutandi. It is now my pleasure to invite to the podium Ms. Morgan Daje from the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement. Morgan has a particular interest in the multi-sectoral nature of nutrition and the fact that all actors, all relevant actors have to work together. And I think speaking to you as a group of parliamentarians from different sectors, this is a particularly opportune moment for her. Morgan, if you could please come. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous, good afternoon. Next slide, please. I will kindly outline briefly the content of today's presentation. When the next slide comes in, it will be fun. Perfect. To start with, I will present the SUN movement and its approach very briefly because it was already done this morning by Dr. Nahasangula. I will then explain in a few words why good nutrition matters to the economy and what role can parliamentarians play in influencing budget decisions for nutrition. I will then explain how parliamentarians can gain further financial knowledge thanks to the budget analysis to support their work, and will finally present what support the SUN movement can provide to parliamentarians. Next slide, please. So the goal of the SUN movement is to achieve a world free of malnutrition in all its forms by 2030. The SUN movement focuses on the first 1,000 days from conception to age 2, but also increasingly on the multiple forms of malnutrition such as overweight, obesity, and the non-communicable diseases. Since one sector alone cannot address malnutrition, the SUN approach ensures coordinated actions across many sectors such as health, education, agriculture, environment, women welfare, for instance, and others, as well as actors such as parliamentarians, the UN, the media, the government, academia, business, civil society, donors, and many more. In each member country, all these coordinated efforts are convened through the government focal point. And those government focal points are only waiting to engage with all of you to support you on your advocacy work and mission. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the SUN movement today is made of 60 countries and 3 Indian states, and it includes 40 African countries that have committed to scaling up nutrition globally. Next slide, please. So Dr. Feely before mentioned the fact that studies show that every dollar spent on nutrition in the first 1,000 days of a child's life generates $16 in returns and boosts the country's GDP by over 10%. In 2012, the World Health Assembly endorsed 6 global nutrition targets to be achieved by 2025. These had been presented earlier by Bibi, but you also have, again, the different logos on these different targets. To reach this goal in the next decade and its challenges, such as the demographic boom, climate change, etc., will require increased government investments. Governments must act now to fulfill their promises and save millions of lives. According to estimates, to meet 4 of the 6 targets, current government funding needs to increase 2.3 times over the next 10-year period. Next slide, please. In this context, parliamentarians can play an important role in contributing to the reduction of malnutrition and stunting rates through enacting laws and regulation, as well as influencing the shape of national development plans and determining national budget design and allocations. They should review existing legal and policy frameworks through a lens that is nutrition sensitive, as was just explained by my colleague here. This to ensure that there is a comprehensive nutrition legal framework in place in all countries. For those identified national nutrition priorities to be enforced, as well as policies and programs to be implemented, budget allocations are very crucial. In this regard, parliamentarians have a special responsibility to set the example and to encourage others to take action to improve the nutritional status of its people, with a special focus on infants and young children throughout the budget cycle. Next slide, please. To do that, parliamentarians need knowledge and evidence on nutrition to enable them to make informed decisions to sustainably address the causative factors of malnutrition and to better advocate for improved nutrition resources for nutrition programs. They also have a role to ensure that they scrutinize the budget to ensure that the needs of the vulnerable population are reflected and catered for, and ensure that funds are utilized for the purposes that they were allocated for. Next slide, please. At this stage, what is crucial, once the budget is formulated, is the budget speech. And this is where you can play a great role. For this, and as always advocated in the SUN approach, it is essential that all key ministries responsible for the delivery, implementation, and monitoring of infant and young children nutrition programs are involved all along in the process and allocated their fair share of the budget. This will give them the required knowledge and the evidence to then debate the budget and scrutinize effectively finance bills and amend them if necessary. Next slide, please. When it comes to budget adoption, MPs can propose budget changes with amendments to better reflect the national nutrition priorities. Throughout the implementation period, they can also send oral or written questions on how nutrition allocations are spent and or if they are spent on time. Finally, they can also request a budget audit to make sure that budgeted programs were implemented as originally planned. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I was mentioning before that parliamentarians need evidence and knowledge, and a great tool for this is the budget analysis. It's a great tool for advocacy, and the SUN movement has been conducting budget review analysis in order to better inform nutrition debates, especially financing. Between 2016 and 2017, 47 of the SUN countries shared their budget data on nutrition for analysis. This budget analysis exercise identified a set core of nutrition programs and tracked the reported budget allocations to nutrition at the national or subnational level whenever available. It is a transparent process that involves all stakeholders. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the latest available data from the budget analysis, and it shows the percentage of general government allocations for nutrition. The average nutrition allocations across these countries is of 2.9% of the government budget. Next slide, please. This other chart illustrates the share of nutrition-relevant allocations from identified sectors in the 13 countries showcased in the previous slides. So it gives you a good idea of, oh, sorry. So that one is actually agriculture and the other one is social protection. Sorry about that. So this budget analysis, sorry, next slide. This budget analysis can be very useful because it shows how the tracking of financial resources and investments in nutrition can lead to a greater focus on results. The analysis also gives you a useful mapping of the alignment of planned and budgeted interventions, as well as a useful entry points if gaps are identified. This knowledge can then be used as an entry point to foster dialogue between the different ministries, departments, and agencies within the government about the need to invest in nutrition in a coherent way. Next slide. So the SUN movement can also support parliamentarians in this task. For the time being, we have Sun networks for parliamentarians in 10 African Sun countries. 42 Sun countries are already globally engaging parliamentarians for nutrition, even though not necessarily in a formal network. And I would urge and encourage you, if it is not already the case, to please engage with the national multi-stakeholder platforms, if not already done, to start this dialogue. We also have a dedicated page on the website, and we are supporting a global community of parliamentarians on nutrition to connect existing networks for parliamentarians focused on food security and nutrition, which provides a common space for mutual exchange, learning, and capacity building. And to finish with, next slide please, I'm just sharing with you a few resource documents that we have available. The first one being the nutrition investment snapshots of Sun countries, which can be found on our website and are available for all the countries who have done the budget analysis exercise. The second one is the Budget Advocacy for Nutrition Handbook Manual. And the last one, which is coming up soon in 2018, is the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement Comprehensive Guidance for Parliamentarians Working on Nutrition. So I hope that this guidance will also be very useful for you. Thank you very much. Merci pour votre attention.
Thank you, Morgan. We now have the last panelist of the day, or at least for this particular panel session, Dr. Marie Brutano. She's the coordinator for the African Leaders for Nutrition at the African Development Bank, and she'll be talking to us about tackling all forms of malnutrition. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, to give me this opportunity to present this new platform. I will speak firstly in English because my notes are in English, then I will conclude in French. So, the African Leader for Nutrition Alliance is composed of head of state, eminent personality, and the decision maker. Why? The question is why we need this. I think coming back to all I'm getting as information now, we need this kind of platform to have our result to be put on the table of the head of state, so that they can transform it in action taking. They can take action and have some word in their speech to convince people to move for the program of nutrition forwards. So 5 key background information to keep. The first one is that the head of state recognized that malnutrition is undermining Africa's economic progress. The second one is that they recognize that stunting is a major challenge to Africa's socio-economic development. The third one is that they recognize also that despite a growing commitment to reduce level of malnutrition in Africa, progress has been very slow. And the last one is that they recognize that there is insufficient consideration of nutrition among the political and development of priority. So this lead to the foundation of the African Leader for Nutrition, and it was founded by African Development Bank Group, and the president Adesina, who is chairing the bank, have the initiative. It was joined by Mr. John Kufuor, the former president of Ghana, and also some other eminent personality joined him. This is Mr. Kofi Annan. This is the former United Nations Secretary General for UN. We have also Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Aliko Dangote Foundation, Gersa Marshall Trust, African Union Commission, the Director General of Food and Agriculture Organization, Global Panel, and there are very many of them. But we will share the brochure. We have all the information here. And what is the aim of this island? To two main objectives to reach. The first one is to increase visibility of nutrition issue, strengthen political will, and address complex root causes by malnutrition. And the second one is encourage specific policy and financial commitment to end the burden of malnutrition. I don't have the presentation, but it will show the vision of those head of state. And the vision said that when Africa's children are well nourished and can grow, learn, and earn their full potential, we will be able to unleash the potential of the entire continent. The island was found, but it had a structure. So we have it composed of the island champion, who, as I said, is a strong commitment among the head of states and eminent personality. The committee to increase leadership and advocacy and accountability in the fight against malnutrition. Then you have the island champion is now currently chaired by the king of Lesotho. Secondly, you have the island working group, who is like a group who is going to advise the African leader for nutrition. And this committee also will provide recommendation to the island champion. And lastly, you have the secretariat, of which I'm the coordinator. And it is based at FDB, and is going to implement the activity of the ALN. How are we going to work? We have two key tools. Three key tools. The first one is to develop a nutrition accountability scorecard. So we are not going to reinvent the wheel. We are going to use what exists already in the field and use them to come out with some key indicator who can, make this change, this very a very strong change when the head of state will get on the information, with new information. So we collect all the database we have, any relevant database we have, and put it in the package that can be put on the table of the head of state. And they are organized as in this group. They are going to talk to each other, something like a B2B conversation, and we will spread those information also in some very big forum throughout the country. And the second one is to have a biannual review for economic case for investment in nutrition and annual case study. And the last one will be advocacy and communication. As I say, for the scorecard, is going to be a one-stop shop for civil society, government, private sector, and other stakeholders who would like to see the current rate of progress on all aspects of nutrition at the country level. This is why I say that when listening to all the speak this morning, I feel like we have this platform now to move forward. And also this scorecard will highlight individual country progress and provide also a high-level snapshot of continental progress and on all major set of global and continental agreements on nutrition and nutrition target of Malabo, WHO, and SDGs. It also aims to spark dialogue and accountability among head of states, especially during the African Union Summit. And the result from the Nutrition Accountability Scorecard will also be used to inform ADB's operation in regional member and also a key area of intervention to mitigate the challenge of malnutrition. The same toolkit will be shared also with the parliamentarian. And then lastly, for the communication, we are going to highlight Africa's most cost-effective nutrition policy and program, as well as the potential economic gains and needs for scaling up nutrition, and show it to the head of state. As I say, there is going to be sometime a B2B conversation between them. They are going to have this strong commitment between them so that Africa should not suffer from this stunting problem again, because if it is so, then we are going to face, problems in development. And this review will identify financial gap and need to financial nutrition, and collect also the cost-effective nutrition intervention to disseminate to present each year at the AU summit. Okay. Then what is the expected outcome? We are waiting for a high-level leadership on nutrition, policy change, increase national investment towards nutrition, improve tracking of nutrition progress, and cost-effective nutrition program. And then, lastly, the great matter infrastructure support will be support for the regarding these 1,000 days as a matter of an urgent priority, according to the head of CIS. The next step now would be to have a joint plan of action with the African Union for consistency and utmost integration of ALN in the African Regional Nutrition Strategy. Now, just to conclude, what I would like to say that, and I will shift in French now, what I would like to say that, c'est que nous attendons tous, c'est cette plateforme au niveau des chefs d'État pour prendre la décision. Parce qu'on aura beau faire, on aura produit des documents, on les aura distribués à travers le net, les sites, on les aura fait en kit pour partager. Tant que le chef d'État n'est pas au courant ou n'est pas convaincu de ce qu'il y a un problème à résoudre, vous voyez qu'on va traîner, on va discuter longtemps dans les forums et ça ne partira nulle part. Je pense que cette plateforme maintenant, nous l'avons. Mais il faudra l'utiliser. Quand je dis il faudra l'utiliser, ça veut dire que tous nous devons converger vers cette plateforme pour pouvoir envoyer nos informations sur cette plateforme pour qu'elles soient traduites en des kits qui soient partagés avec les chefs d'État. Et ils se sont constitués en alliance, ils ont pris l'engagement eux-mêmes de pouvoir travailler sur les questions de nutrition pour éviter que la nutrition impacte les économies de l'Afrique. La dernière fois, quand nous étions à au sommet de l'Union africaine, nous avons développé cette question de retard de croissance et nous avons démontré que l'enfant, depuis sa conception jusqu'à l'âge de 2 ans, c'est sa seule chance dans la vie de pouvoir avoir un cerveau qui puisse intégrer l'éducation, lui permettre d'être en bonne santé et être un individu, un adulte demain qui sera productif, qui pourra constituer de l'épargne pour accroître l'économie de son pays. Ils ont compris. Et quand ils ont compris, beaucoup se sont engagés. Jusqu'au jour d'aujourd'hui, avant que je ne quitte Abidjan, il y a encore 2 qui sont proposés de pouvoir rejoindre l'Alliance. Ça veut dire en clair que ce que nous étions en train de dénoncer ici, est que j'avais l'information de la riposte au plus haut niveau pour prendre la décision, c'est fait. Donc vous avez l'outil maintenant, je voudrais qu'ensemble on puisse s'engager à pouvoir progresser par rapport à cet outil de travail que nous avons. Quand un président est convaincu, un ministre des Finances est convaincu. Quand un ministre des Finances est convaincu, je pense qu'il peut aller faire un bon plaidoyer devant les parlementaires pour justifier pourquoi la nutrition est un gain et qu'on doit comptabiliser, par exemple, les questions de la prise en compte des 1000 premiers jours de l'enfance en termes de gains dans 20 ans. Si dans certains pays, ça je m'adresse à vos honorables, si dans certains pays on donne des congés de maternité de 3 mois, c'est à dessein. Dans les pays européens que nous connaissons, souvent, vont vers 1 an, 2 ans. Vous voyez, quand vous faites le calcul, ça correspond aux 2 ans de la transformation et de la mise en place des neurones dans le cerveau de l'enfant. En Afrique, nous sommes encore, comme nous avons eu les chiffres ici, nous sommes beaucoup en retard parce que si les moins de 5 ans ne décèdent pas, le groupe qui reste a une charge sociale tellement importante que l'État ne sait même pas comment faire en termes d'éducation, parce qu'il y a des retards en termes de progression dans l'éducation, etc. Ne serait-ce que pour l'iode, on avait vu dans les études qu'on avait fait une fois que l'iode était un élément clé qui impactait sur l'intelligence de l'enfant. Et quand on a corrigé dans la zone où la question se posait, vous avez vu que ça s'est tout de suite dégagé, les enfants ont progressé assez vite. Donc je voudrais m'arrêter là et puis adresser un mot aux parlementaires. J'ai entendu ce matin que Je pense que la fois où on est en train de travailler avec les parlementaires, et si vous êtes subdivisé en 5 régions, les 5 points focaux devraient pouvoir rejoindre aussi l'ALN. Je vais faire le plaidoyer pour qu'on puisse avoir des points focaux au niveau de l'ALN. Comme ça, les discussions au niveau de la table, vous y serez pour qu'on puisse comprendre ensemble ce qu'il en est. Ma collaboratrice va vous distribuer les documents, les brochures. Je vous remercie.
If you could just give a round of applause to Dr. Tanner and actually to all the panelists. It hasn't been easy compressing the wealth of information, knowledge, experience they have into this very short period. But thankfully, and if I'm permitted, to allow some time for questions. So this afternoon we've been reminded of the situation, the dire situation when it comes to nutrition on our continent. We've also heard about the consequences and implications of malnutrition. The cohort studies have put dollar figures to those consequences. And it's sad that we've also heard 80% of our food is produced by rural smallholder farmers, and yet it's in these communities that malnutrition is the highest. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There are some interventions, evidence-based interventions, such as promotion of early initiation of breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. So we've heard about some things we can do to change the situation. And we've also heard about AU organs, initiatives at institutions such as IFAD that are available to support food and nutrition security. And there are additional opportunities for parliamentarians to engage and influence the resources allocated to nutrition at all stages of the budget cycle. In addition to all these opportunities, we've also heard from Dr. Tanner about the eminent group of leaders on our continent, through the African Leaders for Nutrition, that are committed to supporting these efforts to eliminate malnutrition in Africa. So we've heard a lot, but I know some of you may still have some questions. And so I would like to throw the floor open for, I think, how many can I take, Bibi? Can you guide? I know we've taken a little more than an hour. Okay, can I take the first 3? If you could please introduce yourself, and if the question is directed at a particular panelist too, please say so. Thank you. Over here first.
شكرا أختي الرئيسة، ومعذرة يعني، وأشكر الدكاترة والعلماء والخبراء من المنظمات المختلفة، ولكن اسمحوا لي أن أنحى منحا آخرا خالص. إنني أعترف أن هنالك فجوات وهنالك جوع في إفريقيا، وهناك سوء تغذية، وهناك جهود كبيرة من المنظمات العالمية لسد هذه الثغرات، ولكن أحسب أن المشكلة ليست يعني في إفريقيا. المشكلة أحسب اعتقادي أنها تأخذ مسارين. المسار الأول مسار خارجي، تلك الدول العظمى الكبرى التي تود أن تكبل إفريقيا وتكون مخزن لهذه الدول لاستخدام الثروات وطاقاتها، ثم من بعد ذلك تأخذ هذه للسنوات المتقدمة. هذا جانب. الجانب الآخر، نحن في إفريقيا عندنا مشكلة سياسية لن تجعل هذه الدول تستقر للإنتاج. الموارد التي موجودة في إفريقيا ليست هنالك موجودة مثلا في كثير من الدول الأوروبية. اليابان مثلا في الشرق، اليابان ليس لديه إلا أن ينتج قليل من النحاس، ولكن استخدم القدرات البشرية، واليوم هو من الدول النامية وصعودا في الاقتصاد. وأيضا هناك دول أوروبية كثيرة فقيرة جدا لا تجد مواردها تساوي 1% من موارد بعض البلدان الإفريقية، ولكنها لا تعاني من الجوع ولا تعاني. المشكلة عندنا نحن في السياسة الإفريقية الداخلية. إذن أقول لا يكفي التحالف، لا تكفي التحالفات، ولا يكفي دور البرلمان، الدور المطلوب من البرلمان. المطلوب أنه تقوم هنالك ثقافة، تغيير ثقافة الأفارقة. نحن الأفارقة يجب أن نغير ثقافتنا من الركون إلى المرأة التي تنتج 80% في الزراعة وتستخدم طاقاتها، ونحن الرجال ننتظر المرأة، وهذا ما ثبت لدى. ثم بعد ذلك هنالك في دراسة هي سميت كوها. هذه الدراسة أغفلت دولة كاملة، يعني غير موجودة في الخارطة، وذلك يشير إلى أن هذه الدراسة يعني ربما لم تجدد، ربما ولم نأخذ كل المعلومات هذه على أساس أن هي قاعدة سليمة وبيانات سليمة. لا، أنا أعتقد أن المشكلة خارجية والمشكلة داخلية، هذه التي أقعدت إفريقيا عن التغذية. ونأتي، هل هنالك malnutrition وجوع يعني في أبناء القادة، أبناء الوزراء، أبناء الناس المتعلمين المثقفين؟ هل هنالك سوء تغذية لأبنائهم؟ سوء التغذية في القرى البسيطة الضعيفة التي لا تفهم لا تقرأ، هنالك سوء تغذية. ولكن مشكلتنا نحن في إفريقيا، عندنا مثل في السودان يقول يعني لا تنظر إلى الفيل وتطعن في ظله إذا أردت الصيد، يعني هكذا لازم تصيب الفيل مباشرة. السودان واحد من الدول التي هي حسب المعايير عندها 36 عنصر في قياس الدول اللي هي عندها مصادر متوفرة، واحدة من 3 دول في العالم، وتنتج إنتاج وفير جدا، ولكنها مكبلة بالحرب منذ سنة 1956. 50 سنة ونحن في حرب، وهذه الحرب تصنع لنا من الدول الخارجية بدعم الحركات المسلحة. فلذلك الإقعاد أيها الخبراء وأيها الوزراء وأيها العلماء وأيها الوكالات الأممية، المشكلة ليست هي مشكلة إنتاج وصغار مزارعين فحسب، المشكلة هي خارجية وداخلية. إذا حلنا هاتين المشكلتين فنحن في إفريقيا نكون في مقدمة الدول العظمى وفي مقدمة الدول الكبرى ما تمتلكه من مصادر ومن معاني. أنا مثلا تشيف، يعني سلطان، you can say chief، يعني community leader. أنا مسؤول من 1,000,000 نسمة في أرضي، أرضي التي يعني على امتداد البصر صالحة كلها للزراعة، تحتها في بترول، في ماس، في ذهب، في فضة، في صوديوم، في كوبالت. قسوا على ذلك، هذه هي إفريقيا. لذلك نحن نحتاج لتغيير الثقافة في إفريقيا، ولا نحتاج للدعومات، ولا نحتاج لهذه الدعومات الكبيرة. صحيح نشارك العالم ونشارك العالم المتقدم في التكنولوجيا ويمكن أن نستفيد منهم، ولكن في نظرية تبادل المصالح وتبادل المصالح. العالم المتقدم عنده العلم، لديه العلم، ونحن في إفريقيا نمتلك السورسز وكل الريسورسز، نتبادل هذه المنافع ونرى هل هنالك جوع أو هنالك سوء تغذية الأطفال. شكرا سادتي.
Thank you. If we can take the next two, and if I can please plead with you to be as brief as you can so that we get more people. I saw, yes, please, and then I'll take yours.
Merci, Madame la modératrice. Je pense que la question qui se pose, c'est plus une question de volonté politique. Comme disait la dernière intervenante, si je prends le cas de mon pays, le Mali, nous sommes aujourd'hui dans une situation pratiquement de guerre. Mais en dépit de cela, de 2013, quand Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta était parlementaire panafricain ici, à aujourd'hui, en 2014 déjà, il était président de la République. On a dit à Malabo qu'il faut que les États accordent 10% de leur budget à l'agriculture. Lui, il a passé à la vitesse supérieure, on est aujourd'hui à 15,1%. Et quand on constate au niveau même de l'évolution, ça a drainé toute l'économie. Malgré que nous soyons en situation de guerre, nous sommes la troisième économie de l'Union monétaire économique africaine. Après la Côte d'Ivoire et le Sénégal, c'est le Mali qui vient. Ça, c'est parce que l'agriculture booste tous les autres secteurs. En décidant de... Et ça profite à tout le monde, particulièrement à nos moments. Il y a, par exemple, les cages de proximité où on fait l'élevage de poissons, l'élevage des poules, etc. Donc, je pense que la volonté politique est essentielle. Si je prends un exemple, en 2013, nous étions à 6 500 000 tonnes de céréales, toutes céréales confondues, mais aujourd'hui, en 2017 même, on était à 9 500 000 tonnes, donc un gap. Ce qui fait aujourd'hui, l'autosuffisance alimentaire est là au Mali. Mais par contre, ça profite plus aujourd'hui, la politique, il faut savoir corriger maintenant, parce que cette politique profite plus aux populations à la base qu'aux citadins. Parce que nous sommes dans l'espace UMOA, on dit qu'il y a une bonne production au Mali, et les autres pays viennent payer. Mais par contre, les centres urbains, eux, maintenant, il y a un renchérissement également. Donc, il y a toute une question de politique et de vision et d'anticipation en matière de développement. Je pense que l'avenir de l'Afrique, ce sont ses enfants. Donc, il faut que ces enfants soient bien nourris et que ces enfants puissent porter l'Afrique de demain. Donc, c'était une contribution. Je pense que cette volonté politique, il faut que nous y travaillions pour que cela soit. Merci, Madame la modératrice.
Thank you for that intervention. And the last from the floor, gentlemen. Please remember to introduce yourself.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Moi, je veux insister surtout sur l'échange égalitaire entre le Nord et le Sud. L'échange là est d'autant plus important que si c'est rationnel, ça booste l'économie. Et le secteur le plus sensible au niveau de l'Afrique, c'est l'agriculture. Donc, mais l'agriculture demande aussi un support financier. Sans ce support financier, la bonne volonté seule ne suffit pas. Donc, au niveau de l'Union africaine, il faut nécessairement adopter une politique égalitaire d'échange pour que nos économies soient quand même soient bien assises et faire face aux différents défis. Ces différents défis-là, effectivement, si effectivement ces défis-là sont amoindris ou avantageux, tenez-vous bien, c'est l'agriculture qui va essayer d'être boostée et ça va nous permettre d'évoluer plus rapidement. Moi, je félicite les présentateurs, mais ce que je vous demanderai surtout, que les résumés de ces exposés-là soient transmis aux députés, aux honorables, pour que nous puissions exploiter rationnellement. Parce que nous qui sommes là, on n'est pas là pour nous-mêmes, mais on est là pour représenter des assemblées, pour que nous puissions faire le feedback dans de meilleures conditions. Mais très souvent, on vient seulement, les exposés se font et on se sépare. Alors ça, vraiment, ce n'est pas très bénéfique pour nous. Donc j'aimerais que les supports quand même soient distribués à chaque député pour que nous puissions être mieux armés. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. The last point about circulation is noted. Over to the panelists. If any of you would like to respond or comment on the interventions that have come from the floor, if you could just indicate. And so Angeline, please.
Do you need a speaker?
would like to respond to the Honorable Member of Parliament from Sudan with regard to the cost of hunger study that some countries have been left out. I think Sudan is now going through that study. And it's the new Commissioner for Social Affairs has insisted that all the 55 member states have to go through, because now we only have 17 that have gone through the process. Thank you.
PowerPoint, please.
Thank you, Angeline.
PowerPoint. My point is the study is missing. The country Sudan is divided into two. The Sudan is divided in two countries.
Yes.
The study is missing the South country, South Sudan. That's what I mean, because this study may be little bit older, not updating the all details which is in the study. So we cannot confirm this study as a basic study in order to confirm this, because country itself not appeared in the study. So for this reason, it's difficult to confirm it like a study that approve it like that. So my English is not so good, but I try to explain to you what I mean.
No, thank you for clarifying. I think Angeline can respond to that.
I perfectly understood his intervention, Honorable. Both North Sudan and South Sudan are going through the process of the study. Separate. Each country has written to the government, to the AU Commission, to initiate the study. North Sudan is very much advanced in the negotiations. South Sudan is still in the application process. So there are two different processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Angeline. For the other two interventions, if any of the panelists just want to comment. Dr. Tana?
Merci. Je voudrais juste rebondir sur l'exemple que le Mali a partagé. Et je voudrais dire que ce sont ces genres de leçons apprises dont on a besoin pour documenter. Et les présidents, les chefs d'État vont se parler entre eux. C'est-à-dire celui du Mali peut se rapprocher d'un chef d'État X ou Y qui connaît des problèmes qu'il n'a pas, qui se trouve peut-être en dessous des 6% dont on parle, pour dire voilà, j'ai eu mes 15,5%, mais ma population est vraiment, je veux dire, j'ai pu atteindre le résultat en termes de nutrition et d'agriculture. Ça, ils le partagent et ils se parlent entre eux. C'est pourquoi on parle d'alliés, c'est pourquoi on parle d'engagement, c'est pourquoi on parle j'allais dire, de groupes d'amis. Ils se sont engagés pour dire entre eux, il faut que l'Afrique ne souffre plus de cette histoire d'insuffisance de croissance des enfants, parce qu'au bout de 2 ans, on a perdu ces enfants-là. Et donc, quand un chef d'État le comprend, et ce que je l'ai dit, un ministre de l'économie, de finances le comprend forcément, et il peut exposer devant les députés, et vous êtes à l'aise pour prendre les lois en fonction. Donc c'est ce que je voulais ajouter en termes de commentaires. Merci.
Thank you, Marie. If any of the other panelists would just like to say a few words before we wrap up. Unfortunately, because of the time, I won't be able to take any other interventions from the floor. But Madame Jennifer, Alison? Okay. Angeline, again? Do you want to say something?
I just want to comment on the two honorable members spoke about the political will.
Yes.
And I think really this is the key problem we have here. We are pushing the whole responsibility over to one another. I think that's why we came to you as lawmakers to help us to talk to your respective governments, to look at the underlying causes of hunger and malnutrition, to look at all the policies and provisions at your country levels, because the African Union cannot push. There's a limit of what level they can push to. So we rely on you lawmakers to put the pressure when you can on your own government. Thank you.
Thank you, Angeline. And on that note, if we could just give a round of applause to our experts on the panel, and also to yourselves for your patience in sitting this afternoon and listening to us. Thank you all very much. And if I can invite the panelists to take their seats again. Okay, see, when you're a facilitator or you're moderating a session, it's always difficult for you to get thanks. So let's give a round of applause for Rachel for ably moderating this panel. With all the time constraints, I think she did a great job. And thank you once again to the panelists for the insights they provided. And once again, my name is Buitepo Bibi Giose. According to the agenda, which you have in front of you, I should be giving a synthesis, a very short synthesis and some highlights on the way forward before we go to the communique. There's a slight change in the program in the sense that, you know, the roadmap will be discussed internally by the Pan African Parliament and NEPAD, and at the opportune time, and FAO as well. And then at the opportune time, I believe that this information will be shared with the honorable parliamentarians and indeed with our partners. So without further ado, let me just go to the business of this short session, synthesizing what I had or we all had since this morning. I think one thing that came very clearly and loud is that Africa is not short of policies, and Africa is not short of commitments, and Africa is not short of initiatives. As we just heard from the last panel, you know, the African Development Bank has an initiative. In the morning we had NEPAD as initiatives, the AU organs have initiatives, so there are so many initiatives. But what is lacking is the coordination, the synergies, and the management, the coherence of bringing all these initiatives together so that the initiatives can speak to one another and complement each other, with a view to addressing what we have heard is a major challenge for Africa, which is malnutrition in all its forms. Secondly, what we heard since morning into afternoon just now is that Africa has a huge potential to produce and feed itself, and even feed the rest of the world. What is hampering us, in part, could be our land policies, our land tenure policies. It could be also the kind of information and knowledge and skills that we have to be able to produce in a way, diversified way, that can address the challenges of malnutrition on the continent. So that said, it is acknowledged that nutrition must be made a priority by all countries. And nutrition, naturally being a multi-sectoral subject, we have to engage all different sectors in a coherent manner. We have to make sure that the policies and the programmatic approach speaks to one another. Moreover, at the level of the Pan African Parliament and the Alliance itself, we have to ensure that the different parliamentary committees are informed, they engage with one another, and that they can receive the kind of information that will empower them to move this agenda forward. Speaking of information, it was echoed severally that data is one of our biggest challenges on the continent. Without data, we cannot be in a position to develop any evidence-based policies or programs. So we need to work on ensuring that countries can produce, analyze data, use that information and knowledge to build on the required policies. At the level of the parliamentarians themselves, honorable parliamentarians were tasked through different presentations and from the morning, from the high-level official opening, that your role
is that of high-level advocacy. The kind of advocacy that will keep the candle burning insofar as advocating for better nutrition, for better production and productivity with a nutrition lens. The other role is that of ensuring from where you sit, accountability mechanisms to be in place. And then for you to support, as it is your duty, I believe, and your mandate, to design regulations and laws, but not only that, go beyond the design of the regulations and laws, but to make sure that these laws are actually enacted and adhered to. Another important element is that of supporting the mobilization of resources. In this regard, we cannot overlook or forget the importance of the ministries and ministers of finance and economic development planning as the holders of the purse strings. Because once they understand the gravity of the challenge, then they should be in a better position to allocate resources that are commensurate with the magnitude of the problem. And then, of course, it was noted that we need to support, and the parliamentarians have to spur and support capacity building at all levels. And in that space, it was mooted that the knowledge, information, and the tools and guidance has to be domesticated from global to continental and to the national, local level, so that it can be accessible to where it matters the most. And then for the technical arms, such as NEPAD, FAO, and indeed, our colleagues from the Pan African Parliament and our other colleagues from the Scaling Up Nutrition and other UN agencies, our role going forward would be to support in the design and development of tools and guidelines that will help with information for the parliamentarians to be able to effectively and efficiently implement what has come out of this high-level event. And also for us to support further with capacity building from the different angles where we engage. And also for us to challenge ourselves to continually engage with policymakers in their different forms, in their different capacities in different countries of the world, of Africa, and indeed engage furthermore with the regional economic communities and the local authorities. And it was also mentioned several times that in terms of the evidence that we have from studies such as COHA, amongst others, we must endeavor to take these studies to scale so that all African countries are catered for and can have very contextualized information that will allow them to know what problems they're dealing with and how they should be resourcing the programs for these programs. And it was noted by the colleagues from UNICEF and indeed from SAN that adopting a life cycle approach is critical so that we don't leave anyone behind. So looking at the 1,000 days and the importance of it thereof, but also going through the whole life cycle, school children, adolescents, and the middle age and the elderly, all with a view to make sure that we can actually nip the intergenerational cycle of malnutrition in the bud. And then more importantly, the chair from this morning, Honorable MP, she emphasized the importance of engaging women. We know that in Africa, most of the food producers are actually women. So women are, producers, women are the food processors, women are the caretakers, and women are this, that, and the other. So the more we can engage women, I think the more we can be able to realize some of these challenges in a meaningful way. But it was also noted that the role of the Pan African Parliament is not enough, or it will not be enough. In that space, the Honorable MP echoed the need for us to change our African culture so that whatever we do going forward is done in a way that allows us, through our behaviors, to actually yield some results. And considering that the problem of malnutrition is both an external issue because of the external influence, but it is, moreover, an internal issue. So we have to engage in mutually, for interests that are bearing results for those that most need the kind of support. And last but not least, I would just like to say that it has been suggested offline, but also somewhat online here, that this forum should be made into an annual gathering that will ensure that the different parliamentary committees engage with issues of food and nutrition security, and also with a view that the annual parliamentary forum for the Alliance will also assist on the issues of accountability, so there can be feedback as to how far the agenda has been taken forward and what we need to do more and better. And then also in that space, it's been mooted that engaging the national level parliamentarians would be critical, and not forgetting the regional economic communities. Once again, the regional economic parliaments would be important. And of course, for us going forward, it's been requested, and we commit to circulating the presentations from both this morning and this afternoon, and inshallah, they will be translated. We'll have to look into that, so that, as the Honorable parliamentarian put it, you are working on behalf of your constituencies. So going from here, you have to be equipped with the outcomes concretely, so that you can share them with your constituencies with a view to helping them to improve their own circumstances. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to call on Madam MP to the podium, and we hope to be finishing on time at 5. Thank you very much.
Hey, we are coming back to raise the morale. Please clap for her. And I said I would come back. This week you must clap. So I want to take this opportunity to, actually, as we come to the closure of our meeting, to appreciate all the resource persons that we have had today. And I think that they have done a great service to the reason we are here today. And for me, every day is a learning journey. And we deal with, our committee is actually very wide. Rural economy issues cut across all sectors. Issues of climate change cut across, environment cut across, agriculture cut across. So every day for us is a learning process and a learning day. And we want to accept the truth is that we've learned a lot from very resourceful people that we have interacted with today. And I salute you again. And most of them were very great women of Africa, and of course great men. I am here to read a communique that we have drafted between the three parties that convened this meeting. That's the Pan African Parliament, the NEPAD agency, and the food and, that's FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. And I think this will be, and in case there would be anything to amend in this communique, I would be very much honored to receive them. But otherwise, if we adopt, then we'll call it a successful day. And this will be later interpreted into French because it is a draft, and it will be given to the rest of the members in the different languages of African Union and the languages that we use at the PAP. So the high-level event on nutrition and food systems, that is 7th March 2018, Midrand, South Africa, the Gallagher Pan African Parliament Secretariat. We new Partnership for Africa Development, that is NEPAD, the Pan African Parliament, the Food and Nutrition, I think it is Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, and the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, that is SUN, and other partners participated at the high-level event on food and nutrition systems held on the 7th of March 2018, which is today, at the headquarters of PAP, Midrand, South Africa. And of course, the preamble, as usual, referred to the African leaders in 2014 through the Malabo Declaration and its implementation strategy and roadmap, committed themselves to reducing stunting to below 10% in Africa and underweight in children under 5 years old to below 5% by 2025. Today is 2018, with the aim of eliminating hunger in Africa in the next decade. Reaffirm CAADP momentum needs to be sustained through effective implementation and delivery on the goals of the Malabo Declaration on Agriculture, integrating it with the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development Goals, and attaining the aspirations of Africa Agenda 2063. Further to the Rome Declaration and the framework for action adopted by the Second International Conference on Nutrition, held in Rome in November 2014, build on the premise that sustainable food systems are key to promoting healthy diets. The UN General Assembly has reinforced the call for action by declaring 2016-2025 the decade of action on nutrition. This decade coincides with Africa's intention and target to eliminate hunger by 2025. Recognize the role NEPAD food and nutrition security flagship programs such as homegrown food, homegrown school feeding, food fortification, including biofortification, maternal and child nutrition, capacity development, policy and advocacy. Is also a founding and a co-member, technical advisor to the Cost of Hunger Studies in Africa, that's COHA. Appreciate the commitment by African Union member states, regional economic communities, the Pan African Parliament, the FAO, to strengthen development of food and nutrition security programming, policy and advocacy. Acknowledge the importance of the launch of the Pan African Parliamentary Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition by the Pan African Parliament and FAO to position the issue of food security and nutrition at the highest level of the political and legislative agendas in order to achieve the developmental objectives of Africa, and to contribute to a Pan-African Parliamentary Alliance on Food Security and Nutrition as a regional platform for African members of Parliament, and to discuss and agree on critical issues related to food security and nutrition. Recognize the Interparliamentary Union and the Scaling Up of Nutrition movement called for action on nutrition from speakers of Parliament of 58 SUN movement countries to strengthen parliamentarians' engagement and identify ways to end malnutrition in all its forms. Aware of the efforts to promote nutrition and food system by the support from governments and development partners, take cognizance, therefore, of the outcomes of the high-level event on nutrition and food systems, 7th March 2018. We members of the Pan-African Parliament and the participants in this high-level event therefore commit to do the following one: accelerate the implementation of the Malabo Declaration commitment for achieving nutrition and food security as a priority, and the second International Conference on Nutrition and the Africa Regional Nutrition Strategy 2015-2025 outlines the specific role of the African Union Commission in the elimination of hunger and malnutrition. Strengthen the existing and the development of policies and recommitted to end hunger and nutrition in Africa and child stunting. Monitoring the implementation of priority nutrition and food security indicators stipulated in the SDGs, the Malabo Declaration and other relevant commitments that address hunger and malnutrition in Africa. Assess progress to achieve zero hunger at the regional and national levels through the support of the parliamentarians. share basic and important concepts on nutrition and food systems, nutrition programs, policies and initiatives in Africa, and present global linkages and opportunities for improved nutrition and food systems, provide an opportunity for the parliamentarians to enhance dialogue and understanding of the challenges and opportunities for action and impact. We recommend as follows: African Union Commission, NEPAD, the PAP, REX, and member states to implement legal policies, instruments related to nutrition and food systems. Undertake strong measures to strengthen nutrition programs, policies, and initiatives in Africa. Urge NEPAD and FAO to commit to organize annual events during the PAP statutory meeting, to sensitize parliamentarians on issues related to nutrition and food security. Encourage NEPAD and FAO to provide technical and financial support the demand of the parliamentarians and their respective countries in implementing key nutrition activities. Obviously present this communique during the plenary session of the PAP, that's in May, for its endorsement by the whole Parliament, and recommendation to the member states and the African Union Commission. Adopted in Johannesburg, South Africa, 7th March 2018. Ends the communique. So I want to suggest that, unless someone has anything to say, but if there's nothing to say, okay, is there anybody who has anything to say in regards to the communique? So those in favor say aye, those against say nay. Aye. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. So congratulations, felicitation. So this communique will be translated into our 5 languages and will be shared to the honorable members. And that is technical secretariat now. I think they are taking note. And it will be very soon, I hope, before you leave South Africa. Because in case you have anything to add, so that when we present it to the House in May, there will be it is our own document that we have adopted. I would like to take this opportunity to most sincerely thank our partners who have been very committed to spend a whole day with us. I think we deserve to clap for you, the different stakeholders. And in a special way, I want to give a thanks to FAO, because we started this journey together at the PAP, and I think that we are getting somewhere, so we need to clap for FAO. And I will not forget to thank you, the honorable members, who have made your time, and I don't think we are talking about nutrition for the first time in our strategic plan, which we are launching in May. And I want to send an invitation already to the partners who are here, that in May we are launching a strategy, which is a very big strategy in terms of addressing different aspects in the continent within the agriculture committee, but also nutrition is one of the top agenda in that strategy that I may want to supply to you before you even come in May, because I know you have agreed. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just enjoy being on the microphone because that's the job I'm paid to do. I talk and talk and I go and sleep. But for now, I'm sure everyone is exhausted, and we have achieved what we wanted to achieve, and I want to wish you safe journeys, bon voyage, muendelee salama, shukran. Obrigado. The meeting is closed. Tomorrow, all the men are invited. Of course, it's Women's Day, but all the men, please don't stay in your hotels. We are having a function. It starts at midday. But first we have a caucus from 9, women's caucus. All men are also invited. Then you are invited for the lunch with the women tomorrow at midday to the wee hours of the day. So I can't know what time it will end. So please come, be with the members, your women, and be with us. And then on Friday, our usual meetings proceed, Committee of Agriculture. We start at 9 sharp. So I expect to see you. So have a very good evening. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. So you clap for me. You know what? I did a great job.